Hi, welcome to ASP.NET. This is Christian. In this video, let's go over the server controls and what type of controls you can use to build your web page. So I'm going to create a new project, and I'll just call this server controls. I'll put ASP in front so I know this is server controls. So web.NET framework. I will choose just the empty template. Okay, it's a very simple one. It's taking a while. Shouldn't be this long. Okay, so here we are. I'm going to close this. And as you can see on the right side, it's very simple, right? Very plain. Now I'm going to create a new file. Right click here when you select the project folder. You can right click on it, or if you select it, right click anywhere here, it will still be fine. Add a web form. We'll call this just the index. And you should be presented with the index.aspx. And if you expand this arrow here, you see the code behind file. It's called index.aspx.cs for C#. We're using C#, by the way. And it doesn't use any template, so we just a plain HTML. That's why it has all these elements here. And it's using XML namespace, so that means you have to close all your tag with a closing tag, right? So if you have like something like this, h1, I mean like even like the meta tag, you have to close that. If you don't close it, it's gonna yell at you because it's not conformed to XML. So if you don't like that, you could just basically remove that out, and then you don't have to worry about not closing the tag. It's HTML5. Alright, so you're presented with this form. It says form ID of form 1, run on server, at server. Okay, and this is required if you are going to use any of the ASP controls. So there are three types of controls in ASP.NET. One is your standard HTML controls. These are just basically HTML elements, and I'll put out here in the form. For example, if I put h1, the title of this page would be like maybe ASP server control. We'll just call it that. Okay, that could also be in the title. I'll put that in there as well. Just copy and paste. So this is your usual HTML element. It does not get parsed by the ASP engine because it's not ASP control. Okay, the second type is it's like a partial because you can have an input. For example, input here, input tag, it's a regular input element. I might have an ID called my input, and I want to run this on a server. I could do that as well. Okay. Now this is, you have some control of this element. So ASP can still manipulate this element even though it's not a 100% a full-fledged ASP control. Okay, so this one here, ASP does not control this, so you cannot access from the back file, code behind file. You cannot access this data. Only way to do this is you were to access using JavaScript or something like that, right? Okay, so the third type is ones that has the ASP in front, ASP colon, and then the type of controls. So like for example, the text box is very common. I'll give an ID. Notice the convention is you capitalize the attributes. This could be like a txt, we'll call this I guess we'll call this course name. Okay, and then you also need to say run at server. If you don't do that, it's going to be ignored by ASP, even though you have that indication in the front. And I'm just going to leave it blank, no default text. Okay, So when you do this, it's gonna ask you, it's gonna have an error because just by the rule, if you have any type of input type of controls, like take a text box, a drop-down box, a combo box, or a text field, those need to be wrapped inside a form control that run on the server. Okay, if you don't do that, it's gonna have a compile problem and it will yell at you. For example, let's say this is true. I'm gonna go ahead and click and run this file, and it's gonna prompt an error saying that the line 12 needs to be embedded inside a form control. Okay. Let's see if that's the case. Kind of slow because I'm doing the debugging, so it's debugging at the same time. And sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, depending on how you run it. So if you don't want to recompile, rebuild your code every time, you just run without debugger, and that's usually faster. Maybe we'll do that next time. But I hope this one doesn't freeze on me. Come on. Okay, so as you can see, it says the text course number, that's this line 12, must be placed inside a form tag with the run at server. Okay, so it's required to put that in there, otherwise it won't work. Since this is an input type of element, I'll move that inside here. Okay, if you have a different type, like for example, if I put ASP, just a label, for example, label is not an input type, then that should be okay. Put like LBO, you know, maybe course name, right? And I'll put the text here as well, called course name. So that would usually put that in front of the tag here. But I think that should be fine. If I save this, and I'm going to run without debugging, so much faster. We'll see how fast it is, but it's not that super fast either. And I'll need to move this like back over here. Okay, as you can see, there's no problem with that. Okay, although I don't see the text in here. All right, so maybe I will shrink. Yeah, we're gonna close that anyway. Okay, so that's fine. Well, the reason I forgot to put the run at. So there you go. That's my error. That's why I didn't see it. Okay, let's try that again. Hopefully it's faster this time. And yeah, you actually see the word course name, because it will be processed by the server. As you can see earlier, it did not show that because we didn't see that earlier. So here is the course name. Okay, and this is the label, and it has no problem. So when you do a source view, you see everything is converted to your standard HTML elements. The label will be converted to the span tag. The input is the user HTML. Whatever I type is what I get there. It added the type attribute in there, but it was not processed. You don't have access to that field. Then inside the form, we have the input, and has a hidden field called the view state, again because it wants to retain the data for this field, and also this field here as well, the label. And then there's the course name and the data and so forth. Okay, so back into the code. Alright, so we have the label there, a really simple application to show you that there are different types of controls. Now this form here, I'm going to add another control here, and so usually we'll put this like right in here, right inside here, so that it would say course name and followed by the input box. And I'll put a BR here, break line. we'll just put right next to it. I'll put a ASP, another one, button. Or let me do it the other way. You can do the code using code, or you can also do using the design, because this is ASP.NET Web Forms. As you can see, I can have a preview of the output, right? The source code, the split. You can also have a split view as well, if you want. And the toolbox, if you expand that toolbox, you should see all the controls here you can add to your code. Either in the code view, you can drag and drop here, or in the design view, you can drag and drop here. So let's just say I want to add a button. I drag it, put it here, wherever I want it. Okay? And once you click that button, on the right side of this, if you have it the way I have, you should have the properties box down here. If it's not, it's there. Just turn it on. So this property box, you can do all these here using this GUI interface. Click at the button. The actual text is called button. So you scroll up and down. If you choose the alphabetical order of your variables here, properties. So instead of button, I'm going to say submit. As you can see, it changes to submit. Okay. The ID of the button is here. Just call it button 1. If you look at the split view, you'll see that it's called button 1. Okay. You can change it here. You can do it outside here. And I'm going to call this by convention, maybe BTNs for button, and I put submit. Okay. It changes here in the code as well. Now this will be a button, so it should have an event, usually a click event. So you can do that here as well. The book shows you can do like on a click, right? Equals, and then you can do a new event here. Okay, or you can do here using the GUI interface. Again, click the button, go here, and this lightning bolt icon here. It's all the events that you can use for this button. So click on that. It will tell you the click event. If there's anything that is already built for you, right? And there should be one called a page load, because that's an event. If there's not, you can create one. Okay, you can create one. Call it. Maybe I'll call this one here the submit click event. Hit enter. Okay, so automatically it jumps back to the code behind file and created this function called submit click, with the same signature as you see with the page load. Now this is called an event handler. And for event handler, it must have these two parameters. If you take that out, then it's no longer an event handler. If that's the case, then you cannot attach that to a button. If you do, it will crash. It's not going to work. Okay, it's not an event. So just a rule, event has to have these two parameters in here, and then when you click on the button, it's going to call this function. Okay, so it adds that automatically, whether you do here in the using the GUI interface or you in the code. You do in the code here. Okay, so now let's go back to the just the source view, and I'm going to close my controls. So now if I want to click on this event button, it's going to call the function back here, and then from here I can access these data. This one I can't, because this H1 here I can't, because it's not part of the ASP. It does not run on the server. This one I can get its data by accessing its ID name, my input. Okay, so if you want to read the data here, you can go back here in the control here. You can say my input. You can see that it's visible there. Okay, my input, and then to read the value, you have a dot. You press the dot. You see all these options that you can use. Now, some of these are similar to the ASP server control. Some are not. So you lack some stuff in here. So, for example, one thing you won't see in here is the text. As you can see, there's no text here. So I can't say text to get the text out of that. Okay. The other one, which is this text box, because it's a text box, it has a text attribute, which is not here, but it does have it here. It's just blank. Excuse me. So we can change this to have something. You can say text equals ASP.NET. So this is default text. So back here, if I were to use that control, it's txt course name dot text. Okay, as a text property, and I can use this. As you can see, if you mouse over this, it tells you this text object or this text element here is a get and set. So it's a property. You can use this as a setter and getter, right? So a setter will be on the left side of equal sign. I can change that to something else. It's a setter. If I want to get it, I can say things like string text is text course name dot text. Now this is a getter. This is a setter. So a property gives you that option. Okay, I can get that. I can replace the data to hi world, and I can read it back. It will just say hi world. Okay, so if you run this file, it's going to change this right away from ASP.NET to hi world, and then it replaces that when I click the button. Okay, so let's run this. I'm going to go and run without debug. So it's much faster. And not as fast as I want it, but it's fast enough. Okay, so you can see it has ASP.NET. This is the default. When I click on it, it changes to hi world. Okay, so again, refresh. You see that it's retained its state because of the view state. We talked about view state in the other video. Because of this view state, it retains its data. Okay, and then so that's how you access your code behind. Use the code behind the file to access your data out here on the web page if is a control that has to run at server attached to it. If it's not, you can't. Okay, and there are some limitations as to what file you can or what control you can or cannot use. Like this is an regular HTML element, but it's rendered on the server, so I can still access it, but I cannot use the text property. It does not have a text property there. It has the usual HTML value. So if I put like a value here, something like, you know, just say hi world there, then I can access this data from here using the string, pull it str, the my input dot value instead of the text. It does not have. It doesn't have the text, and I can replace it with the text course name dot text is now equals to the string, which is the value from the other input. So it will be replaced by this. So again, if I save this, because I'm changing my C# file, I have to do a rebuild. Okay, if you don't do a rebuild, that means when you call your file here, it does not reflect the changes. Once you do that, you can refresh it. Okay, and you see it has a hi world here. Well, I should have changed it to something else completely, but you'll see that when I click submit, it changes to that. If I make it like, you know, that, it changes right away. Okay, so that's how you can access data from the code behind the file. Again, depending on the type of control you use, you have some access. You have some properties you can access, some you don't. And again, you have to put all the input types inside a form, like a text box, like these right here, all these, like the drop down, checkbox is here, the list box. Okay, these are things that requires an input, takes input. These must be wrapped inside the form with the run at server attribute. Others can be put outside here, it doesn't matter.